Hello Hockey World, it's Monday, April 31st. I'm just kidding. It's Hello Hockey World, it's Monday, May 1st, 2023.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen. I thought I was Kevin Over there for a minute. I'm trying to read that.
I don't know that I'm dreaming or if this show is actually happening or what's going on here, but I think some strange things have happened since we talked to you guys on Friday.
This was like this was a weekend in space. Everything was floating and upside down, and
everything was weird. And we have so much to get to.
Why don't we work our way back from yesterday? Because yesterday,
including some previews of the next round, even I think we should probably start talking because we have Kevin today, so we should probably talk about that a little bit as well.
Well, but okay, can I just say yesterday was upset Sunday. That's the only way I can, because nobody in their right mind, except Anthony Mangione, who picked Seattle, thought that the Kraken had a chance to beat the reigning Stanley Cup champion. And the thing is, they're not exactly the reigning Stanley Cup champion because they're without Kadri and they're without Kemper and they're without Nichushkin and everybody. But
title holder is still a title holder, though.
Right, Kev. And that's the thing. It's like I was absolutely dumbfounded that Philip Grubauer out-goaltended Georgiev in the series and that Seattle is now going to the second round.
Yeah. Well, it was a strange weekend, but as I started to write this morning about the strangeness of it all, I stopped myself in my tracks because, first of all, the whole Boston scenario is similar, not exactly the same than what happened 4 years ago with the Tampa Bay Lightning. The record holder tied the record. They go to the first round. They get swept. They didn't even get to 7 games. So we're used to that. And it occurred to me too is that, the reason we watch sports is not because the Vegas Golden Knights can take care of a very weak Winnipeg team in 5 games. We watch because, the Seattle Kraken can beat the Colorado Avalanche, and the Florida Panthers can come back from 3-1 and beat a team that won 65 games in the regular season. That's this is what sports is all about. And this is the weirdness that happens more so in hockey than in other sports. And it speaks to the parity, speaks to the team concept. Every game is, it's almost like a series within itself. So, coaches tell their players just one game at a time. Well, that kind of works, sometimes. So, anyway, it was very impressive. I give high marks, and Bobrovsky, of course. The other side element to this is Bobrovsky was also in net when Columbus did that to Tampa Bay. So that's a secondary story here as well. And of course, the fact that he looked like a $10 million bust, but this series that might be worth at least $2 or $3 million.
Yep. Just even getting a game 6, I know it was like $2 million. So now you're looking at 2 more games.
Well, especially with all the Canadian snow, it's not snowbirds because it's May, but especially with all the Canadian people who live in Florida with the Leafs going down there for 3, at least, 2, maybe 3 games. Those will be sellouts, but it'll be 50-50 Leaf fans and Panther fans in Sunrise.
Yeah. Did they sell out this Boston series?
They did sell out the Boston series. I think they will sell out, without the Leaf fans there. I do think Leaf fans will drive up the secondary market for sure. Like they have already sold like a lot of tickets for the play. They sold their playoff strips pretty well, so it's not like there's a ton of tickets available down there.
Paying double, but on StubHub, paying double for tickets in Florida will be cheaper than paying for purples at the Scotiabank Arena. So you'll get a lot of Leaf fans. But
here's what I'm going to say though about the Seattle series. They knew when it was a close game that they were just going to batten down the hatches and hope for the best. And the fact that Colorado had a goal taken off the board was huge. And so I do give them credit. I don't think they're going to be able to play that way right to the Stanley Cup where they just sort of play so defensive if they have a two-goal lead. They're not that good to be able to do that, but they were good enough yesterday. And so I do give them credit because Borgstrand was having a great game and he is a heck of a player. But not much else was happening for that offensively.
I do have to give credit to the crew that I think it was TNT or TBS who broadcast that game. And when that McKinnon goal was overturned, we got more of a look, Russ, than we ever have at the video before they made the call. I mean, they showed, I think it was Lehkonen, they showed him astride over the blue line. And it was almost like we were in the command center.
It took about 4 or 5 tries to get that, but they did get that, and that was good camera work.
Yeah. And put up Earl's comment in there, because I did notice this, and it was something that was worth noticing. Did you see this? Like, I have never.
No, I didn't.
You didn't see it? Oh my gosh!
Why would I expect?
It's more than noteworthy, and listen. Hacksaw's a great guy. Like, my buddy Eric used to carpool with Hacksaw. Their kids played on the same hockey team, a junior, like a little hockey team, whatever. But so I know Hacksaw's a great guy. I know
he
Hacksaw's
doesn't laugh a lot when he's in media circles. I've been in front of him 100 times, and I can count him maybe laughing like twice.
But this looked like he had lost the series. Like, it was unbelievable. Like, there was moments where he's standing waiting to shake hands with their other coach, and he is sitting in absolute deadpan silence. I'm gonna get a picture of it tomorrow or something for you guys.
I've seen this before. I've seen it with Mike Babcock.
Yes.
Mike Babcock, during the Stanley Cup victory that he had, stood back along the boards and didn't celebrate with his players. And I went over to talk to him, and nobody was talking to him. I talked to him. He goes, "Not my time." He said, "Believe strongly. This is players' time, not my time." So he did not look as jubilant as you would expect for a winning coach. But that's basically what he said. Not my time.
No, I mean, I get that, but you flip that on the other side, and the way Paul Maurice and his staff reacted after Carter Verhagen's time goal.
Well, the staff reacted. See how the staff reacted? Like, they all went in and hugged Hacksaw. They all went, like, they grabbed him.
Yeah.
But then as they peeled off of him, he was like,
yeah, but you don't know what he was thinking.
I don't know what he was thinking, but it was. I don't, and I give him maybe he's got the same attitude,
Yeah, but I mean, it'd be interesting if anybody else noticed, because they'll certainly ask him about it.
Oh yeah, he's going to be asked about it.
Yeah.
It was very, very clear. You couldn't get away from it.
But just on the Bruins situation for a second, and don't get me wrong, like Bergeron playing with a herniated disc. Again, the guy played with a punctured lung. He played, he's played through so many things throughout his career. You can never doubt the guts of that guy.
Yeah.
I don't think it's been out there whether what was going on with Krejci, but I still can't believe. I mean, okay, Bobrovsky played well in relief of Lyon in that series. Tkachuk was a force of nature. But really, it was more than Tkachuk. It was Brandon Montour scoring a bunch of goals. Russ.
Brandon Montour was a beast.
This is his coming out party this whole year. He's always been an offensive defenseman. It's just he's been in different situations.
Yeah. Well, his timing on goals, Russ, was insane. And Lundell actually yesterday.
Yeah,
you started to see what Lundell's all about. Like, he's a serious playmaker.
But I'm going to tell you, I think Bob stole the series when he stopped Marchand on the one-on-one, because Marchand looked after that. He thought with no time left, that was the game winner, and that was the series winner, and it didn't happen. And really, the Bruins could not get much offense going.
Something Bob did way better than any other goalie I saw in the first round, and it's one of Bob's skills for sure. And it's something I've always noticed about him, that he absolutely freezes the puck more than any goalie you'll ever see.
Yeah,
he loves to stop the momentum of play. Like, he is constantly all about that. Like, if it's around him and he can freeze it without getting called on a penalty, he's holding on to it, or he's waiting and putting his glove back down on it.
Yeah, and I agree with Northern 96. I've been saying for a while, Carter Verhaeghe's a star in the league. Just nobody treats him that way, but he is. He's a star in the league.
He's got 10 playoff goals, 5 game winners, and there's only 3 players in NHL history that have had more in their first 10 goals, more game winners, and they're all like guys that are celebrated. Chris Drury is in that list.
He's not celebrated at all. It's crazy.
Yeah. This is a perfect instance of like a Bill Zito find. Like this is like an agent. When you think of Bill Zito, who was an agent, but wasn't like a super agent, he wasn't like one of the powerful agents, so he didn't automatically get star players. So he had to go out there and look for the players that he saw could be star players. And as a he's done the same thing here with Bennett and Reinhart and Verhaeghe. Bennett was a star player. I know, but Verhaeghe wasn't a star player in Calgary.
But Bennett was really good in the playoffs, and please, I was advocating as somebody who covered the Leafs. If the price for Sam Bennett was a second-round pick, go out and get that guy, because he performs in the playoffs. Now he's performing in the regular season in the playoffs. He's a pain in the ass to play against. Yeah. Sam Reinhart. Now, I'll tell you one thing: Zito benefited from the exodus in Buffalo and the stupidity of Ralph Kruger.
Yeah, no question.
Ralph Kruger was the one who was trying to make Brandon Montour, like Rasmus Dahlin, into a two-way defenseman. They traded him. They got him for a third-round pick. A third-round pick, and now he's arguably better on their team right now than Aaron Ekblad. He could
be like the MVP of the playoffs so far. Montour is that good? That's how good he is.
He had 73 points this year.
Well, he had 5 goals in this series, and again, there's only a handful of defensemen in NHL history. One of them was named Orr, who had 5 or more goals.
Yeah,
it's insane. It was an insane series, and you know what's interesting about the two teams that are playing each other in Toronto, and we'll get to that in a second. But in Toronto and Florida, is they played very similar series against the teams they played against, where they both only won one game at home, I think.
Yes,
and they both won games in overtime.
They both won 3 games in the opposing rink,
and 2 of them in overtime. Right.
The Leafs won all 3 in overtime.
Right, and the Panthers won 2 of them in overtime. Right. So it's like that's kind of the gumption of like getting off the mat. It was an overused term, but the Panthers were definitely that was.
We still buried the lead here, though. Like Matthew Tkachuk's the best player in the playoffs first round. Like,
so far,
nobody better.
Yeah,
and I gave Zito credit for that on Off the Post yesterday, because it's like he went and got him. He thought he'd be a difference maker in the playoffs. We were worried that they wouldn't get to the playoffs, but now they're in the playoffs. He is that difference maker, and he has made a massive difference to that team. He has definitely changed the personality of that team, and he's made them harder to play against.
Now, I don't know if I can back Tkachuk's statement after the game. I understand. I understand the feeling of it, because you're in the moment and you're proud of the team that was an 8th seed against the President's Trophy, best record ever, blah blah blah. But he said that was the greatest playoff upset in NHL history. It was
close.
It was close.
Oh yeah, I don't. But Mike, you can make the argument. Like, you can't make a declarative statement and say it wasn't.
I'm not taking anything away from them. And what they did was
no. But my point is there's arguments about 3 or 4 people. 43-point difference
is the biggest.
They had 65 wins. Boston did.
Right.
To me,
you can make an argument. You can certainly make an argument
of any team that's ever beaten another team in the playoffs. So when you look at it that way, the 43 points is larger than anything else.
No, it's not. The Kings and Oilers in '82 was larger.
That was the one.
That was more okay.
The one that you probably had a ringside seat for, Kev, with San Jose, Detroit in 1994. That was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was, but I can't say that this was. I just think, these are kind of things that are barroom arguments that they're fun to make, and there's no right answer. Exactly. So if Chuck's right, you're right, I'm right. We're all
there is no wrong answer.
It's right. No wrong, but I actually love when guys come out and say things like that. Like I'm a big fan of Tkachuk.
I'd rather him say it than not say it. To be
honest. We're journalists. We want him to say it.
Tkachuk's interviews are so awesome. When he talks, he's just so. He's so real, like so dumbfounded by what's happening. So it's awesome to see. You just don't get that kind of personality very often.
He and Bob changed the momentum of that series. I do because Boston was up big in that series. What's weird is now Krejci's been on 2 teams that were up 3-1 that ended up losing because the Flyers beat him that way too. It's just odd. It's not his fault.
Yeah.
It's just
no, it's not his fault. But that and that was.
He's got to make up for Verhage too, whose worst quote ever.
Yeah.
I saw his post game after scoring that amazing goal, and I'm thinking, you got to step up your game off the ice too, buddy. Like you are a winner on the ice, but
the winner on the ice, the contract they got him for is crazy, and they've really done a heck of a job with it.
I don't know if we've heard if there was any information on this after the fact, but I was exchanging messages with somebody after Friday after they lost in Game 6, and I said, "Is there any way that Montgomery goes to Swayman in Game 7?" And he said, "No chance." And they did, and they went to Swayman in Game 7. Now I don't think he played badly, Kev, but I don't think some of the goals I thought were a little the short side goal. You criticize obviously, but
I mean those are just judgment calls. I don't know. I mean, Allmark was not good.
No.
In 6.
No.
And I know the Boston Hockey Now came out and said, and I thought this was a good take. Their take was, look, whatever you're going to do, but do it Saturday. Like, don't let everyone guess and build up the drama.
Right.
Just announce who it is so everybody has time to digest it. The team has, knows what's happening. Everyone's, kind of feels good about it. So, that was their take. And I thought that was a good take because, you can be criticized either way, for not, sticking with the guy that's going to win the Vezina Trophy. I mean, that's justifiable criticism in my book, or letting it go when he clearly was not the same goalie he was in the regular season. So
I don't agree with that, Kev, at all. Like I think they, you don't want to give the Panthers any. You're saying that they should announce that he's the goalie for Game 7 early.
No, I said they should inform the players what the decision is on.
Inform the players.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I think it was good to keep it away from the Panthers. I think that's best.
I never think any of that matters, but I see your point. I mean, I know coaches that feel that way. So
yeah. I mean, the amount of scouting and the amount of video they have on every player and every goalie in the league is real, and it's like I'm not saying the Panthers would have gone and searched out all that video, but it's there.
Most teams prepare for both goalies. I know in Detroit, it was almost enlightening because Lalone actually talks about preparation, and that's what they do. Like when they get their video sessions, they act as if either goalie could play.
Wow.
So
one thing I could imagine though is Tuukka Rask sitting back in his easy chair, just saying, "This is a shame."
Yeah. I mean, it's like, listen, I mean, it was so crazy. Like the game last night was very frustrating watching from you guys know I was texting about the referees, and I never text about the referees. That's not one of my things. But I was frustrated by the reffing in that game, and because of all these power plays going to Boston. And it's one of those situations like we talked about before, like Boston and Florida don't want to trade power plays, even if you're going to even it up because. No. But they weren't even evening up. It was like Florida had a power play, got up 2-0, and never got another power play until there was like 4 minutes left in the game. And it was you have players. I always thought that when someone slashes someone's stick and breaks it in half, I always thought that was like an automatic.
It used to be, and now with the way the sticks are, I guess
I saw that happen 3 times and not get called. But I was like, what the heck? This is on the heels of Boston scoring 2 power play goals to get back into the game. I was just like, this is a little bit crazy, but I give the Panthers just so much crazy credit for
tying that game late in regulation
for sure.
Yeah, but
I got to be honest with you, though, Eck. When I saw that thing, I thought it was Mike.
I know.
I did. When I saw that, I think, Eck, that's not. I was really shocked. I thought that was Mike.
And I wasn't even. I don't. Subject. It would. What got to me was the broken sticks thing because like that every time I saw them, like, well, they're going to call that.
Yeah.
Called,
Well,
not to be called.
The whole concept of calling the game differently in the postseason, I saw Mike Johnson and Michael Rupp, 2 guys who are both TV analysts arguing about that, and Rupp says, "Yeah, this is the way it has to be done. It's a different game. You call it differently in the postseason." And Johnson said, "What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. The game is the game. It's called the same, should be called the same no matter when it is." Yeah. And then, other people chimed in.
It's ridiculous. I back Johnson in the theory that it's ridiculous, but we see otherwise every year.
Well, but that's what his point was, that we shouldn't see otherwise.
I know, but we do though.
So.
But we do.
I just think there's a human nature to it. I don't even think it's an attempted thing by the refs. I think there's just a human nature.
We rule by memo in the NHL. We always have, and I think that's. I mean, I haven't checked in the last few years, but I'm assuming that's still going on.
Well, they always tell them to do it the same, but isn't that memo always to do it the same as you did in the regular
season? No. They clarify rules about what the standard is.
Really?
They have.
I thought they never did that. Like I thought it was very clear that they were.
Well, I mean, they say they don't, but there's always a clarification because usually you're dealing with something that's new for that year, and they've had time to sort of look at it.
Oh, so you're saying they took a rule maybe that was, and then when the season ends, they want to clarify it before the playoffs, kind of?
Correct.
Well, thanks to Stappy.
That's an interesting way of doing it.
Here are the top 5 teams with calls for them. So Carolina is leading everybody with 4.17 playoff opportunities per game.
Right.
Power play opportunities?
4.17.
Yeah.
The Rangers are next.
Yeah.
And Dallas, then Boston, then Minnesota, then Toronto.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm surprised at Toronto because Toronto was 32nd in the league, I believe, in getting penalties during getting power plays.
Listen, I think there's no reason, absolutely, that the Bruins should have more power plays than the Panthers in a game because the honest reality is the talent and skill that they have. You're going to, versus the talent and skill that the Panthers have, you're going to pull guys down. You're going to have to hook guys. There's going to be things. There's going to be stuff, right, that's going to happen. Like you're going to trip Pasternak twice a game. He's going to draw penalties. That's just the way it goes. That's how it's going to play out. And I'm fine with that. So I'm fine with those kind of penalties. I'm just like I guess just to me, the only reason I complain was, like I said, the automatic. And I don't want to one thing that Kevin is absolutely 100%, 1,000% right on, Kevin, this year. And you deserve a gold star that I'm going to put right on your screen right there for this. And that is, I almost wanted to find the quote and play it back because you said it three times, I think, at least on the show. Bertuzzi is a playoff player.
Yeah.
And my gosh, is he ever? He was maybe the best scorer on the ice.
Yeah, he was their best.
The Red Wings knew that he was a playoff player. They just couldn't get him to the playoffs.
Right. They know everything they know about him. He's going to be great if they get to the playoffs with him. And gosh, he might have been the best Bruin at times.
Well, the funny thing is, Kev, is that it's tough to say that a guy who scored 5 goals in 7 games underachieved or was disappointing, but Pasternak had 5 goals and no assists in 7 games, and really he didn't have as much of an impact as they needed him to have, especially with Krejci and Bergeron not at 100%. And I think
Mike, he was sulking. Like that's the thing that got to me about him. Like I got pissed. It's one thing, right? It's one thing. I agree. I think 0 assists is a big deal, for him. But not necessarily, right? He's going to score goals. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think 5 points in 7 games for him was bad because he was sitting there literally sulking like all the time. Like he was just.
The whole offense was out of sync. It was, especially in that last game. I mean, it was out of sync. It was getting out of sync a little bit at a time, but they were overcoming it because they do have a lot of talent. But it eventually caught up with them.
You know what I thought about though when they couldn't get it together in Game 7 was something that Eck talked about that I dismissed, but I know Tom Laidlaw feels the same way about what happens when a player comes back after they've grown used to him not playing. I mean, Bergeron comes back.
Yeah.
They didn't play well.
And then Krejci came back and they didn't play well.
Yeah, no, they didn't. They didn't have it together, and they had moved on without him, but they had figured out how to play without him and built the lead. And then Bergeron comes back, and they seem just to be. I mean, not significantly out of sync, but just a little out of sync. So
we didn't talk about when we debated that before. Somewhere where we can fall in between where you are and where Tom is on this thing is the fact that when a player comes back in the playoffs, he's not necessarily the player he should be. Like he could be because he's not 100%. And yet, if Bergeron and Krejci aren't 100%, the coach still feels required to put them out on the first power play unit all the time. The coach still feels required to play him at the beginning of every period. Like he's that, and that is something that is undoubtedly played into this because Bergeron and Krejci played a lot better last night, but before last night's game, I thought he wasn't the greatest. But Bergeron, he never really got it. He never really got it going at all.
Yeah, we have two big stories off the ice too.
Yeah,
we're going to get to those.
The playoffs.
But before we get to the we got to go back to Saturday night now, Mike, because that's what people are here to hear. Okay, and I'm going to first start off this whole thing by saying this: the Leafs did not deserve to win that game. Bam.
Well,
they did not deserve to win Game 6, but they did. And I'm watching this game. So, really funny story in my neighborhood. Like, you guys know that I don't drink at all, right? But there's a once a year big wine thing in my neighborhood that goes on, and I have to go with my wife every year to this because so I'm at this thing, but I'm watching the score other than the game, and I come back in the beginning of the third period. At least what I saw from the third period to the overtime.
Well, okay, it was an even first period. Matthews scored in the second. The Leafs were guilty of what every team does in the playoffs when they're up in a lead, especially a series deciding game. They went back into a defensive shell in the third period and it played right into Tampa's hands. And Stamkos got the tying goal. And Russ pointed out when we were talking in our chat that Matthew Nyes, who's been really good for the Leafs as a young player, was responsible for the turnover. Yeah. And my criticism is I think they're playing him a little too high in the lineup, but he's playing really well. And I just wrote in my blog for Hockey Buzz, in Game 6, Samsonov out-goaltended Vasilevsky. The only reason that game got to overtime was Samsonov was incredible in the second and third period, and he made a couple good saves in overtime that allowed the Leafs to win the game on the Tavares overtime winner. I mean, this is a complete and utter departure from everything that has happened over the last 6 years. Now, like I said, this series, and I give all the credit to Kyle Dubas, the core players played and they performed. They combined for 42 points. The core five, the four forwards and Morgan Riley. But Ryan O'Reilly had 7 points, took big face-offs. He was, he got the tying goal in Game 3. Jake McCabe played 27 minutes in Game 6, led them in ice time. Luke Shen partnered with Morgan Riley, which was when they made that trade for a third-round pick, that thought would have been unheard of. And guys like Yarncroke and Samsonov, who they added in the summer, they played well. So
and Riley was
Riley's part of the core five. Yeah, I mean
he might have been the best player on the team because he seemed to be always there in a similar way to Montour. Riley was like leading the show.
Riley was the best player, I thought.
I felt vindicated in listening with to John Cooper afterward. I'm sure, Mike, you paid attention to it as well. But what did he say? He said, and this is almost an exact quote, "We played well enough to win, but they didn't win." And the implication of that is, we're no longer good enough. The Toronto team is a much better team than us now.
Yeah.
And that was pretty clear. He just said, we can talk about whether or not, they are, what games we played better. But, when they had to have the big goal, they got it. Right. We didn't. He said they were opportunistic in their scoring. We weren't. And basically goes to what I said all along. The Tampa Bay Lightning knew in the second half of the season that they weren't good enough anymore. They were looking for ways to try to pull that out. And they couldn't find it because they were at a talent disadvantage or at a depth disadvantage. That Toronto team has gotten better. As Mike said, Dubas has done a terrific job with his acquisitions at the deadline. The Lightning could see all this. They could see what was happening with their own team. For some reason, Vasilevsky was a little off too. And they knew it. And they just couldn't do anything about it just because Toronto was the better group. And, I give them full marks. As he said, we played well enough to win. We just couldn't.
Yeah, when you get to overtime 3 times in a 6-game series, we all know overtime is a coin flip, and the game winning goal. I says, luck is the residue of design. That's the line I use for the blog today. And it's like, okay, the Leafs got lucky in the fact that they tied up the game in Game 3, and Morgan Riley's shot drifted over Vasilevsky's shoulder to win Game 3, and then in the deciding goal went off of Darren Radish's skate for Tavares. But it's the design of all those players that Dubas brought in were all key for their victory. Is like if you would have been depending completely and solely on the core five, they probably would have lost this series. But the additions that they made were integral to them winning the series.
Yeah, here's the big thing for me. They did it. It's off their back.
Yeah.
It's only a first
round more than anything.
Mike was smiling. Like I wrote you saw my article, Mike, obviously, right?
It's only a first round win. Like they can't get crazy about it.
Right,
Fans can't get crazy about it.
Well,
because there's a lot more left. There's a lot more.
Well, no, but the thing is, okay, now there's a different kind of pressure because now that Boston has lost.
I know. I knew you were going to do that. I knew you were going to go there. I knew it. I was waiting for this.
Now
you're going to do this, Mike.
And this is not to be perceived as an insult to the Florida Panthers.
I know.
But now the pathway, the road is sort of plowed. It's like, it's like we were in this blizzard in December and somebody walked through and helped me shovel my driveway.
It's not about Boston. Right. It's not about Boston having 185 points, whatever. It's about the fact that we're the Bruins.
Because, all you would have heard had the Bruins won yesterday was 2013 Game 7. I would have been on you for 4-1. And
I know.
2018, 2019 Game 7. It would have all been the scar tissue of them playing Boston again. Now they're playing a team that they've never played in the playoffs. The only storylines are Carter Verhaeghe being traded by Lou Lamoriello and Matthew Tkachuk being the line mate of Mitch Marner in London. Those are the only.
There's one more.
Lines.
You know what the other story thing is that everybody in Florida is talking about?
Paul Maurice was a former Leaf coach.
No, not that one even. Paul Maurice going nuts on them this year in that Toronto game. Like when they played Toronto at the end of the year, remember? That was the game.
He ripped the team on the bench. Yeah,
that was the game he tore the team apart on the bench when they were losing to the Maple Leafs. And right after Tkachuk had said that the team was a bunch of babies, and I'm still the only person I think who has recorded what he actually said because I have my sister-in-law who reads lips. And he said, "F off, F off, F off. You're all a bunch of midgets. You're playing like a bunch of midgets." And she said that's exactly what he said. I sent this to her. I sent her the video of it, and I'm like, "Can you tell me what he's saying here?" And he's like, I think he's saying midgets. What? She doesn't understand hockey. Like she doesn't understand like the midgets, pee-wee type thing of hockey. So I'm like, he's saying midgets? Why would he say midgets? I'm sure that's what he said. So he was like, F off. You're all playing a bunch of midgets. They're like playing like a bunch of midgets.
Let's just
I'm not falling victim to this though because Florida really did play a great series. And
they did.
Because they played a great series, I don't care that it's the Leafs not playing Boston. It's the Leafs playing a team that's red hot right now. That's right. What it looks like to me.
Florida's very, very capable of beating.
Here we go. Yeah,
they are. They are very capable. If they beat the President's Trophy winner, they can beat anyone.
You're right, Mike. You really are. But you always lose your credibility because you come at it with such
it's a bad sell.
Yeah,
if you are to
you gotta come at it like a journalist instead of a fan, like because you're right. I mean, it is. Your Russ is right on the money. Do you want to be a good team or do you want to be a hot team? That's always been the great debate in the playoffs. You want a momentum. My momentum teams can do very well in the postseason. So.
Yeah, stay tuned for my prediction tomorrow.
That's where you're going to lose your credibility. Because the reality here is you cannot pick the Panthers to win this series. Like,
you want to bet?
There is no. I mean, listen, and I'm a Panthers guy. You guys know this. But
here's the thing: there are 4 of us on this panel, Mike.
Right.
And 3 of us knew Toronto was the better team against Toronto. You could not get to that, even though you knew it.
And one of us writes about Toronto every single day, Mike.
Curse.
That's right. I mean, I know. Listen, here's how crazy it got, Mike. I was typing out a text before the overtime of that game, and I'm like, no. I stopped myself in the middle of it. I'm like, no. And it wasn't even about that. It was about something else completely. But I'm like, I can't even be in these threads during the Toronto game. So I'm like, if you notice, I've stayed out of the threads completely. During the games,
Leafs Nation appreciates that.
But like I said, my article said when pigs are flying, it's crazy. The world is ending. Cats and dogs living together. Michael Jello is smiling, and I said the other thing about that is only for a little while because shortly after that, Mike, the Edmonton Oilers beat the LA Kings.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Hours later, Mike, your happiness ended.
Well, it's just
you can wait on my prediction, but I have no problem with someone picking the Panthers. No problem at all.
Oh, I don't have no problem. I have no problem with them big fans either. Honestly, no. I'm just
No, but unfortunately, yeah, my joy was short lived. But I do have the good feeling that the Vegas Golden Knights will destroy the Edmonton Oilers, and that's I'm giving a preview of what I'm going to be picking. But
just to give you an example, like everybody when we're picking, a lot of times people are picking like one game for a ridiculous, outcome, and that's what Anthony did with Seattle. Like we knew he did that.
right.
24 of us at SiriusXM picked various games, and no one picked Seattle. Just to give you an example.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's
one guy picked Florida. One guy picked Florida next time I heard.
Well, the NHL has that bracket challenge.
Oh, that thing is hot.
And 36% of the brackets had Boston winning it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So even in a parity league, people went with the favorite. So
now, it's hard to go against them. They just dominated everybody.
I would bet that another 15% has Colorado. I bet more than half the ballots already.
Oh yeah, I would think so.
Now, in honor of Joe Morello and NL King, Chris in our that have been frequent in our chat, I bring this back simply for the New York Islanders losing to Carolina. Because as we all analyzed the New York Islanders throughout the season, in the end, their inability to score was their offense being one of the weakest of the playoff teams was the reason why they lost to Carolina. And this is a Carolina team that was wounded without Teravainen, with Aho, with broken teeth or whatever the hell he had. I mean, this was not an offensive juggernaut, and they could not beat Carolina. Now,
Well, my take's a little different, though, Mike. I agree that the Islanders can't score. I do. But I also agreed, or at least I didn't agree. I agreed with myself when I was thinking about it, that Carolina proved to me right before the playoffs started that they were over their losses of the other players.
Yeah.
It looked like Brett Burns was sort of taking things over on the blue line, and they were going to put that in the rearview mirror, and they were going to play really good hockey, and they did. And that's really why the Islanders lost, is because Carolina can do this to any team.
They are one of the best defensive teams in the league. They are one of the best defensive teams in the NHL.
5 or 6 different teams, and maybe nobody's going to mention how Carolina could win it all, but they still could.
And if Carolina plays the Rangers will have a similar problem. Or the Devils. We'll get to that. We got to get to that series too. But I give Carolina a lot of credit. The Islanders. You're right, Mike. I mean, their offense fell apart, but I picked the Carolina Hurricanes. As much as I'm an Islanders guy, I picked the Carolina Hurricanes in 5 because I thought that one of the worst defenses, one of the best defenses against one of the worst offenses was just not a good thing. There was no way that was going to work.
I would like to point out that the New York Islanders are outscoring the New Jersey Devils. They're at the same level as the Seattle Kraken, so it wasn't like they weren't getting any goals.
True.
They were getting goals, but and to be honest with you, their scoring rate was only 17 100ths different than the Carolina Hurricanes. So they were at 2.67 versus 2.50. So, I mean, I picked the Islanders to win that just because I had a hunch. But once I watched a couple games in that, I regretted that. So,
I mean,
Carolina, I thought it showed a lot of moxie.
I thought so too. Let's talk about Edmonton for a second because when that series ends,
must we?
Again, listen here. I will take anyone's money out there, because
no, don't say.
I don't have any money myself, but I can confidently make these bets because I need money. So here's the deal: I guarantee you that Campbell is going to be the goalie in this series at some point. It'll be.
Well, okay. First of all,
it'll be. He'll be.
Are you going to tell me, as somebody who's played goal,
yes,
that you can fault Stuart Skinner for his stick breaking when he's trying?
No. I was off Skinner way before that. You know that, Mike.
I know.
Skinner has given up bad goals at bad times. You can get away with that against the Kings. You're not going to get away with that against the Vegas Golden Knights. That's the reality.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think we're going to see Campbell. I agree with him.
Yeah, I mean they won despite.
I don't know why.
They didn't win because of Skinner in this series. They won. They didn't win. Despite
they won in spite of him.
In spite of him, is a little bit mean. I don't want to be mean. He didn't play terrible, but he didn't win. He didn't win any games for them. He didn't win the series for them. And you're going to need a goalie to win a series against Vegas. you're going to need a goalie to win a couple games because the offense is just so much better.
That's why I don't think they're going to beat Vegas, because if you're going to depend on Jack Campbell to beat them, I don't think that's going to be.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that for sure.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we preview the series.
Let's get to Game 7 tonight, and then we will talk about firing. Okay, so Game 7 tonight, Russ.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'm covering the game.
You're going there, okay?
Yeah, I love covering Game 7s. It's just there's nothing like it, especially in hockey. Just when there's no tomorrow, you never know who is going to be the hero. You never know all of a sudden who is not going to bring it or who's hurt at the last minute. I could go back to the Pittsburgh Penguins, hoping Phil Kessel could play against the Caps. He couldn't in Game 7. The Caps won. The Rangers tried to get McDonough on the ice, and he went around, took a couple of skates pregame. He couldn't play. Tampa wins their first, Eastern Conference final. I've been to those kinds of games. Now, I don't think either team is hinging. There's no injury that's hinging on these teams. To me, it's the goaltending. And I did see the Rangers did do something that I wanted them to do last game, and that was keep it simple on the power play. They went back to the roll power play with Zibanejad on the hammer, Kreider in front of the net, and Fox running things at the point. That works very well. They broke that for like 6-7 weeks after they got Kane with the whole Kane and Panarin nonsense. They went back to that. The other thing is Kreider was locked in. He now knows that he could get into Schmid's head, kitchen, all of it, just by crashing the net. And I give Patrick Kane credit because he didn't make many great plays that game, but he had one breakaway, and he gave it his all, and he got tripped up, and that led to a power play goal. Basically, the difference now is the players have realized they're going to take the game to Schmid and really make Schmid beat them, not like trying to be fancy or anything like that. And I think this is a problem for the Devils because, look, offensively, the Devils could hang with the Rangers. Yeah. Physically, I don't know if they can. Braden Schneider has really stepped it up physically. I think Kreider and Trouba. And so I don't know if they can do that. But I do think it will be a close game. But I do think the problem for the Devils might be their goaltending. And it's not like I'm saying Schmid is a bad goalie. I'm just saying you're putting a Game 7 on him now against a whole bunch of guys that have played a whole lot of Game 7s and other things. And
we know Shesterkin can step up in a game.
Shesterkin had a good game last game. He
didn't lose this one.
That's coin toss type game, so you never quite can be sure. But I thought that the last game the Rangers reasserted themselves. Like this, we're back to where we are. We know we got it all figured out. And the Devils haven't scored enough goals. Like, Mike was pointing out that, what the Islanders' scoring rate is. Well, the Devils are last in the playoff scoring. And, that team should not be last. It's got a lot of dynamic players. Meyer has been a real disappointment.
He's done little things like we talked about. He's not putting the puck in the net.
I still feel as if he's hurt. I think he was hurt at the trade deadline. I think we're going to hear about his surgery with him at the end of the year.
Hurt. I've seen him in the crease battling with guys. I don't think he's hurt.
But I don't know. There's something
off. There's definitely something off.
There's an edge to his game that's not quite there. He's battling.
One thing we're noticing is if Jack Hughes isn't putting up 2 points in a game, they're having trouble with their offense.
But the one cautionary tale here is, and I've noticed this in playoff series. I mean, you never know what with a Game 7 what can happen. Yeah. But the Game 6 is never an accurate indicator of what happens in Game 7. Or Kev, I remember 1993. The Leafs winning in overtime on a Mike Foligno goal, and they go back to Toronto for Game 6, and Detroit dropped the hammer on them at Maple Leaf Gardens, and then in Game 7, the Leafs won in overtime. It sometimes happens like Florida winning Game 6 in Florida and then winning Game 7 in overtime, but dominating in Game 6 literally has nothing to do with what happens in Game 7.
Well, yeah. Most of the time it does, unless it does. So, we'll have to see.
Make a T-shirt with that one, Kevin. I'm going to make a T-shirt with that.
Most of the time all this works. Like, one of the things that I really hate is, the guy's never done well in postseason. Well, until he does. Steve Yzerman didn't do well in postseason. Postseason, everybody blamed him. Ed Belfour didn't do well in postseason.
I did notice
most of the time he's wrong until he's right.
A lot healthier. He's picked up his game. So I expect Palat in a Game 7 to be a dangerous guy and a guy they have to watch. That's for sure. But again, like I said, this is going to be up to Schmid to be able to hold off the Rangers offense. I really do think it's going to come down to that.
You know what's interesting, Russ, about this series? You're watching this, going back and forth between Tampa and Toronto, and then the series go, because they were kind of they're always on at the same time before, they were always, so it's kind of strange. So it's hard to watch both of them. And the other series was so compelling because it was Toronto and Tampa.
I was watching both.
But when you do go to this game, you realize that Palat and Gaudreau are two major parts of that Tampa team that are playing in this other series.
I know.
That's like something that you watch. It's like, and you see that they're both making impacts.
Gaudreau is kind of like this guy who probably would have a bigger impact on another team, but because the Rangers have a lot of players, you only notice him when he's doing like those amazing things that are little things. He's not going to be a big scorer or anything.
He's a really talented kid, though. I mean, he's really and he's also a motivator type player. Like he definitely drives. He had that fourth line that Tampa had was just so good, and it's just like, and that they had to get rid of all of them, It's
like a guy that you just don't worry about. He's always going to give you his best.
He's been a real Ranger. Like he feels like a real Ranger. He does his thing, And I wanted to put out there that I predicted every game in this series correct, as it was going to happen. I said the Rangers would win the first two. I said the Devils would win the next two, and then I said the home teams would win the next two. So I'm going back.
Who's winning this act? Put it on the record.
The Rangers are winning it.
Go on FanDuel. What the hell?
I think I'm pretty much for all the reasons. I think Game 7 nervousness for the Devils, goaltending, and the experience that the Rangers have, along with right down to I think the confidence that the Rangers have in Gallant over the confidence that the Devils, I don't think really have in Ruff as much as they.
I mean, Jack Hughes does, but I agree with that. I don't think the whole team does.
There's definitely a problem with Ruff that's still out there, and even though the whole thing is very funny of sorry Lundy and all that stuff.
Well,
it's very funny. I still would put it about 50-50 that he's here next year, that he's there next year.
I agree with that.
I was just about to say, the fact that I would have said that Lindy Ruff. I think he was on when we talked about like the odds of the coach getting fired. I think Lindy and DJ Smith were the ones I thought were no doubters, but they've had enough success, getting in the playoffs and going to Game 7 against the Rangers. If they lose, I don't know if they can say, well, they're justified to fire Ruff.
I think they can, because I think there's enough people that don't want him there anymore.
Okay,
this is the impression I get, and I just get this impression that that as much as they like him, whenever they were really upset with some of the changes that he made in this series when he pulled players in and out. They were not happy about that at all. As Sharon Govich, I guess, is a big one, right? Like that was one of the ones I think that he moved in and out, which was they didn't like, and because Hughes apparently wants one of them on the line. I just heard little things, little bickering going on, and there's no. So I think that if they had gotten taken out in 4 or in 5, Ruff would have definitely been gone. Now if they win the series tonight, maybe Ruff stays, but. I think, like I say, it's 50-50 they win tonight, so I think it's 50-50 if Ruff makes it. What do you think, Kev? Do you agree with that or no?
Yeah, I think Ruff is on the hot seat for sure, and I think he'll be hurt by exit interviews.
Yeah.
When players, which is why I'm sure Daryl Sutter got whacked.
And that's perfect transition, Kevin. Let's go there. Daryl Sutter, the human Muppet. That's what I like to call him, because he does. I sometimes think there's a guy underneath the table with Daryl's head moving it around like this, because I do deal with puppets so often here. But he does look like the way he moves his head, the way he acts. He's just unbelievably entertaining to watch.
He doesn't try to be, though. He just is.
But the fact that he's on the bus reading about farm equipment and stuff like that with the team, that is real hockey to me. That is you can't. He's not making up this stuff. He's not pretending.
But I think he's hurt himself this year. As a general rule, I think players find him amusing.
Yeah.
I don't think they found him amusing this year. That's why I think he was probably hurt. And if you look at this year, if you're ownership and you fired the general manager and you've invested all this money in Huberdeau, and then you have in your mind how Sutter dealt with that star that you've signed for multiple years. And, it was almost too public, in terms of how he treated him. like it wasn't just behind the scene. It was,
there he is.
At press conferences and, all that kind of stuff. He just seemed like he took too many opportunities to belittle him. So
he did.
Yeah,
he really did.
Was. He was pointing out his faults more than trying to even try and motivate him.
Right.
And it's like, it's easy to point out Jonathan Huberdeau's faults, but his great parts of his game are great.
Right.
And you gotta get that out of him.
And he's yours. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like he's yours for the next 7 years. So
Right.
I mean, you gotta build him up, not tear him down. Like I think Huberdeau. I'm pretty sure Huberdeau knew he wasn't going well.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't think he needed a constant reminder.
Right. He didn't need a constant reminder.
I almost think that the coup de grace or the final straw with Daryl Sutter was the reaction to Peltier. When basically they asked him how he did in his season or professional debut, and I think he read off his number and was sort of dismissive. And I'm like, okay, be a human being. It's the kid's first NHL game, and just say, well, okay, I thought he did this bad. He was sort of dismissive of the sort of event and just treated it with disdain. It's like, you've outlasted your usefulness if you be a human being.
That's a great line. Be a human being. Yeah.
I'm going to say this to be honest. I'm not being a homer here, only because I have spoken to this guy a lot. But if Calgary really wants to remake their image and stop looking like a tired, underperforming team, then hire Craig Conroy as your GM, and all of that will change. He is a bundle of energy. He's smart. Right. He is one of those guys that has been able to put together what he did as a player, also in the front office, like that same skill set. Because look, he was never the best player in the world, but he got the most out of it, and he's really, really bright. And I think they need somebody with some energy. Right. And that's why it was good that they brought in Don Maloney to do all the hangman stuff. That's fine. Yeah. But in the end, they really do need to get somebody that's going to be completely different than the last crew they had. They do.
Yeah, well, I guess Maloney is the GM, and that Conroy is going to be the AGM.
He's not going to be the GM for long, I don't think.
Well, yeah, maybe he's a caretaker. Maybe he's just a year. Yeah,
Maloney feels like a guy who might get a different position there or something like that.
Right.
I don't know. It depends on how it plays out. But and it was always the Western Canadian guys that love Sutter. You hear about it. Obviously, I thought Mike Richards was the perfect Sutter guy. I thought Mike Richards in LA and Daryl Sutter just seemed like they were peas in a pod. They're absolutely both, from the same area-ish, I guess. I'm not sure, my geography, but I think they're both from the same area. But the Western guys, they just eat up Sutter because he's there's a definite personality to the Western Canadian thing. But at the end of the day, how he's handled some French Canadian players, it's been a little different. It's a little different.
No, that's fair to say.
It's interesting, and I don't mean to be a jerk about that, but there's people don't realize that a lot of us in America don't realize that the different personalities that exist in Canada, and they're big. It's a vast difference in personalities. British Columbia versus Western Canada versus even where Crosby comes from. And
I know when I interview a French Canadian player. Yeah. I always know that they do have a different take on the world than someone from America. As an example, they do.
They have they have a totally different way of looking at things, and they take things a little bit. I'm not going to say I don't want to stereotype them, but I don't know that the hard ass Sutter is always the best thing for them or for any player. But but the Western Canadian farm,
time for Daryl Sutter, and I just think that time is gone. That's all. It's just
Yeah,
and it's same as Babcock, same as Quenneville. There was a time when those were the right kind of coaches for that era of hockey, and now we're in a different era of hockey, and they're just not the right coaches for that. Doesn't mean you can't coach.
Lindy Ruff's in that group too. He's in that. Right, so he's in that group too.
Yeah, and Rick Bowness is in that group too. And
let's talk about that.
We talked a little bit on Friday, but the information that came out over the weekend is that he's not going anywhere, that he's going to be the head coach next season, and that would just indicate to me that Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to have to make some moves. And, they have so many short-term guys with Wheeler and Scheifele and Hellebuck. It was going to be a summer where they would have to do some moves. But now I think it's more imperative based on what Bonus is basically saying, that there's sort of a cancer in the locker room and that these guys aren't trying. So
Kevin, does Cheveldayoff survive?
Yeah, he'll survive.
Yeah, I think he will too. One thing that came out of that, which is important certainly for Hockey Buzz, is Connor Hellebuck just was not buying what they were selling about the rebuild. So I just did a story where I listed the goaltending market. And I've been talking about this all season.
Yeah.
But there's nothing in the marketplace, especially if Gibson is not going to be traded. And right now, they're saying he is not going to be traded. So if there's no Gibson, if you throw Connor Hellebuck in the market, then all of a sudden you do have something. But it is a real shortage of even reasonable options in goal. Out there.
And for those teams out there that are saying, Kev, that they're not interested in expending the assets to get a goaltender, Hellebuck being available changes that. Like Tony Soprano in the chat is saying Hellebuck to Buffalo. If Hellebuck is not available, then Buffalo might say we're good going with Luukkonen and Levi. But if Hellebuck's on the market, screw that. You got to go one of the best goalies in the league.
As much as you want them to get a goalie in Buffalo, and it makes sense, I don't like. There's nothing out there that I would say makes them significantly better. Armoff is not going. The word is he wants to stay.
Well, I think the viewpoint of Buffalo is, and they're not going to say this out loud because then they have to. Then they're sort of hijacking themselves in terms of having to make a move. I don't believe that they're all in on Levi and Luukkonen being the pair. I think they would like to get themselves a veteran goaltender who could spell Levi being the number one, but a veteran guy like a Cam Talbot or a Tristan Jarry or somebody.
Yeah.
No, there's no like superstar out there, but there are professional goaltenders that would be an upgrade over the up and down of Luukkonen and Eric Comrie, who was terrible. So I think for Buffalo, they have to do that, but they're not, like I said, they're not going to come out and say it right away.
Yeah. Well, I think the interesting guy, and again, I based this on the conversation with two general managers, one of which is in the market for a goalie, and he doesn't like any of them. And, he just says, I'm just so frustrated by not knowing where to go. But, the one thing about Varlamov, which I think we got to factor in, is everyone's saying that he's going to stay there is based on the fact he wants to stay there. We have not heard what Lou has to say about it.
Exactly.
That's true.
Now the situation is he's old enough to retire. He's 35 years old,
and he's made money,
and he's made plenty of money.
Right.
So I mean, he could end up doing that, but if he was willing to re-sign there for a cheap amount. That Sorokin Varlamov is a good tandem for them.
It is a good tandem.
Part of that equation, Kev, is the fact that Sorokin is up as a UFA after next season, and Lou or whoever else is the general manager in New York, if Lou decides that he doesn't want to be here anymore, that's rule one. That's number one on their priority list. Get Sorokin extended.
Yeah, but if it doesn't matter if Varlamov's willing to sign for a couple $1 million,
right?
I would really keep an eye on Tristan Jarry.
Yeah. The Jarry's he's to me is the X factor. People are concerned about their injuries. As far as I can see, everyone has completely lost interest in Reimer.
That the whole situation.
And I think the Demko stuff has calmed down too, so I don't think that's
happening. But Randy in the chat, and maybe the Sutter thing has nothing to do. I do think that Calgary. It would not surprise me if they want to go with a tandem of Vladar and Dustin Wolf in goal, and if they can trade Markstrom, might be easier said than done. But I do think they're probably still believers out there in Markstrom that they'd be able to move and they'd be open to moving him.
Yeah, I mean, what I was told about Calgary is no one knows what's going to happen because we don't know.
We don't,
What you're thinking. But he said, you would guess he would not be traded. But
right, and I'll just answer the chat room. I do not think Islander ownership would force Lou out. Ledecky really likes him. He's made him some money with these. Even though we didn't love the acquisitions, they made it to the playoffs and they made their money. The Mo Horvat contract's going to hurt them, but they needed playoff revenue. They got their playoff revenue, so they're not going to force them out.
An interesting name, Kevin, that you might want to look at in that list is Alex Lyon.
Is it Alex Lyon? Well, I didn't have him on the list. I mean, you could. I'm not sure people have a lot of faith in him, but he would be a good roll the dice.
Somebody will take a shot at it because the market is what it is, and he.
I mean, without question, because people need backup goalies. So
he'll get a look-see contract like Eric Comrie did because Comrie played great for 19 games with Winnipeg, and it got him a 2-year deal at almost $2 million. And then then the Sabres recognized that he turned into Eric Comrie, and that's
Yeah.
The other interesting story here, which really impacts, because I know I saw faceoff.com had Erik Karlsson listed as number one trade, and then I read Shang Peng's story, where he quotes David Quinn, who had a long conversation, and he quotes Karlsson as being completely torn about whether he wants to leave San Jose. And if he does not want to leave San Jose, they are not going to trade him.
Right. There's no question about that.
So
it's like what I'll say. I know this much. David Quinn's pretty straight shooter. So
that's why. Yeah, he that's what he said. He said he is torn. And right after that, Peng wrote this thing about what a big basketball fan he is. He's gone to the NBA playoff games out there, and he loves San Jose. And
it's hard not to love it. It's a great place to live.
Yeah, Peng's a good reporter too.
Very good. He used to be with HockeyBuzz. But Kev, the thing is, it's like it's the same thing with John Gibson. If John Gibson doesn't want to leave Anaheim, which is we've heard he doesn't, he's got a no move clause. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah,
they can't trade him.
No, that's right. I mean, most of the time that doesn't mean anything because eventually they'll go. But with certain guys. And I do think Karlsson and Gibson appear to be guys like that. Yeah. It does mean something to them. They like it where they're at. So
I think that for Karlsson, like we saw that it did appear that he was willing to go to Edmonton, right? But I think that they couldn't work it out. Did you hear that, Kev? He was willing to go there.
Yes, I've seen that reported.
Yeah.
You mean it was the salary retention is what San Jose.
It was getting another team involved in salary retention, from what I heard. But anyway, who knows? But that could tell you something about Karlsson. It's like does he want to go back to Ottawa? Probably not. But maybe he want to go back to Ottawa. But does he want to go? He wants to go someplace where it's going to be fun to play. That like he's gonna require.
He's been to a Stanley Cup. He would like to get back, I'm sure.
Right. Well, and the other thing, speaking of salary retention, I've had conversations with GMs about that, and I think what they say is logical, but it just bears getting out there.
Yeah.
Nobody, including the teams that are the likely suspects to take salary retention, is going to take salary retention for 4 seasons. Like that's a non-starter.
Yeah.
So you're not. So that was the problem with Karlsson.
Yeah.
You'll take $3 million for 1 year. But you're not taking multiple millions for multiple years.
I think that's why
it has to be a switch of like a trading part of one of your problem type situations. I was told,
as I call crap for crap.
Well, most of those teams that are in the position to do that don't have those players.
Right. And most of those teams aren't exciting players for Karlsson to go playoff. So the reality is he's got to. You think he's going to want to go someplace where he's going to want to win or going to want to be a difference maker. Like what if the Penguins could figure it out? Like that would be an interesting thing, like if the Penguins could figure that out, I don't know how they would figure it out, but
yeah, that would be hard because even if they, took half, that would be.
I've heard Malkin wanted to at one point. I know San Jose was like one of the few places he'd consider going.
No, Florida was the one place he would consider going.
I've heard Florida, definitely.
What if the Islanders traded Josh Bailey and another one of their $5 million contracts for Erik Karlsson?
I mean, Bailey, there's not much of a market for it.
No, I know, but
maybe not that exciting a place for him to go. I don't know. It's a tough situation. Like I think it's got to be a team where he's going.
Josh Bailey,
where he's got to be going.
I told Flyers fans Kevin Hayes probably is back next next year because I could only see the Flyers retaining maybe a couple million for 2 years max, and that would be desperation just to do that, just to get rid of him.
But Russ, do we truly believe that the Flyers are going to go through the rebuild? And if they're not going through a rebuild,
they're going to be like every other team, Mike.
But if they
really want to rebuild, but are saying they're rebuilding, they will go through it until they decide they're not going to do it anymore.
So if they find somebody who's making a similar salary out there, then that would be evidence that they're not truly doing a rebuild.
You can't find somebody else to match up with Kevin Hayes like 3 more years at 7.1. It's hard to find that.
But it's not impossible.
It's nearly impossible. You go
close to impossible.
Okay, I'll dig around and see if I can find a player available for.
But that's why you have to take money off of it. But the point is, like I see what Kevin's saying, and he's right. 1-2 year deals. Yeah, then someone will take money off of 1 year. But like on these multi-year, these guys aren't moving anywhere. Like I know fans all want these players to be gone so their teams could be better again. I know the Flyers are one of those teams. There's no magic wand for this.
Yeah.
There is not. And so before we go, we have to do this because we are getting close to May 8th. Draft Lottery Simulator. Last time, remember, it was the Flyers coming in second. I forget who came in first.
Yeah.
But, and they got their Fantilli lace and a pretty face. Anyway, here we go.
Yeah.
And it is
the Anaheim Ducks.
Okay.
All right, so let me add something here now. So if Washington has the second pick, so Washington just got Ivan Miroshnichenko out of his contract in the KHL. Now, that doesn't happen if you don't have Alex Ovechkin, the future hockey czar of Russia, on your team. So if the Capitals have the second pick, they might take Michkov if they feel like they have a way of getting him out of his contract, maybe at the end of next season. So like when the KHL season ends, he'll come over after that so they get 1 season of him. Whereas if he goes to any other team, they're not going to let him out of his contract. They're going to make him live it out. But this is Ovechkin, and he's got a lot of pull in that country. And I'm sure if he just calls on the red phone to one of his friends, things can happen. This is an advantage that he has over other teams. And Miroshnichenko is a heck of a player, and Michkov is better. But this is the one way where Michkov could actually go second.
Really interesting. All right, there we go. So that's going to be fun. And that's May 8th. So that is a week from today.
Are you picking the second one too? So we see who.
The second one is Washington. We have on there. So.
Okay. I didn't see that.
Hold so it says Anaheim, Washington, Columbus, Chicago, San Jose, Montreal, Arizona, Philly, Detroit, St. Louis. So
the one I like the most is Montreal 6th because that breaks X prediction.
Montreal's going to win this. It's not even a question.
But there's two. Well, my point is there's 2 lotteries, right? The first and the second pick.
Correct.
Well, I guess they run it. Yeah, but I don't think they do it on here, right?
This is an all-inclusive. That they don't do the.
Yeah, I don't think they do this on this one, right? So this is like.
No.
But if I
Oh, you can't run it for the number 2 pick.
I run it again. I get Montreal winning it. There you go.
Okay.
So there you have it. Yep. But anyway, that's that. Montreal did just win it. I don't know if you saw that, but I did run it again. All right, folks. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Big game 7 tonight. Enjoy it, Russ. Have fun there.
It's going to be awesome.
And we'll talk to you about it tomorrow for sure. And tomorrow we'll preview a couple fun games.